Alright, welcome to the last round next to Novice. On the motion about dystopia, I welcome the Prime Minister to start the debate. Here. Is that a camera?
Yes.
Is it on?
Yes.
Just swear in front of it.
Wonderful live stream.
Yeah, it's live stream. So.
The crux of our case today is very simple, right? We're going to acknowledge today that there's some kind of like provocative message and cautionary message in these dystopian tales that we think might be good, right? But our case today is very simple. We think that like insofar as these messages are so provocative and so distorted by the media, we think that in like to that end, the rise of these kinds of like messages and these kind of like dystopian media means that there's a means to, it's basically a means to no end, right? So we think that like we're going to do a few things. First, we're going to prove to you about why there's a net harm insofar as we're able to regret the rise of this kind of media. Second, we're going to tell you why our counterfactual on our side, in which we think that in a world without the rise of this kind of dystopian media is going to be better, right? So we're going to ask two questions to that end. First, we're going to talk about briefly what are these dystopian stories like and what problems do they signify in society, right? Second, we're going to talk about consequences in which they're we'll break that down later. So first question, about what these dystopian stories are actually like. I think that the best way to do that is really just by drawing a few examples, right? So for Black Mirror, for instance, the general overarching theme is about the rise of technology, and it's basically demonization of technology, about how technology makes us lose our humanity. So for instance, about how you can plant a microchip in your brain in which you can replay any of your memory, you can replay your memories, and in like to that end you're able to remember anything, right? Other examples include like Wall-E and like Mad Max Fury Road, where basically there is some form of like wasteland going on, or there's a like there's a dictatorship system, right? But we think that like for instance also about like how in Ready Player One there is basically also the wasteland example, but there is this like platform called Oasis in which you're able to project your consciousness insofar as it becomes some form of like escape from reality, right? The general like overarching trend we see here, and the exclusive characteristic of these dystopian stories is that there is a high level of distortion involved, right? More on that later. We're going to move on to the more controversial area. Second, about consequences, right? About why we necessarily have to regret this and why there's some net harm that's involved, right? So the first harm we're going to talk about, right? Because we have to acknowledge that today there's an existing spectrum of reactions, possible reactions towards these dystopian stories, right? So we think that on the one end of the spectrum, it's going to result in massive desensitization of the message, right? Why so? Because insofar as these dystopian stories, and like I've said before, are highly distorted, we think then that the time and space and the context in which these occur are very detached from reality. The result of this then is that by mechanism, it means that people tend to have very dismissive attitudes of that, right? Why is this bad, right? And why does this occur? This occurs, we think, because we see a natural economic incentive to actually create the most provocative and controversial stories. So we think there's a tendency to dramatize. And that's why the end point of this argument is that we think we have to regret these kinds of dystopian media, because we think that at best they add very little value insofar as they're so detached, right? Why is this desensitization then a problem, right? We think that there are two problems. First is the problem of non-action, in which they feel because it's so detached from the current situation and reality that they are in, they don't think then that the problems or cautionary messages that they might talk about actually will surface. So the first question is about non-action. But more importantly, we're also going to talk about the second outcome, about how this creates some sort of counterproductive reaction towards existing progress for problems, right? Insofar as it becomes very highly, the highly dismissive social attitude, it means that it's going to hurt a current discourse surrounding these problems, right? Second consequence we want to talk about, right? On the other end of the spectrum, right? Insofar as these stories are so provocative and intense, we think that it kind of the whole like root cause of the problem is that it feeds into people's fears and insecurities about the future. Why is this bad? Because insofar as like a lot of the episodes in Black Mirror, they tend to demonize technology and they show intensely how technology can go wrong and the consequences of things like this going wrong. It results and I'll take you in a while. It consequently results in some sort of like tangible harm in which people fear these kind of advancements. But before that, yes.
Would the government rather a world where there is no depiction of dystopian future, where where the media sugarcoats a said utopia, where people don't understand the unrealisticness of a said utopia?
I'm going to move on to that about the counterfactual that we prefer, but we think here is like it's fair to point out that it's not exactly a binary, right? Insofar as like it's not because like we don't show this message, it like directly means that the media is going to sugarcoat or hide away all these problems, right? More on that later. So moving back about how like basically feeds into people's fear. Why is this bad? It means that people become more resistant to change with regards to things like rapid technological advancements and environmental catastrophes, right? This kind of like message and air of disillusionment is bad because it hurts society in many ways. What am I talking about? It means that like insofar as people are so resistant to things like technological change, like for instance with regards to automation and AI, it means that like your government and your Congress is not able to like generate enough social will and political discourse and political capital to move for things like, for instance, having more AI automation in places like hospitals and like other like industries, for instance, like construction, where we want to move our human capital away from, right? So we think that like even if like they're going to say that there's some sort of like harm that results from the lack of these dystopian messages, we think that the direct, immediate harm of like this resistance, societal resistance towards potential change is something that's very real. Lastly, we're going to talk about the counterfactual that we prefer, right? Look, there's two layers to this. The first is we're going to preempt how they're going to talk about how there's some sort of like cautionary message and that's involved that's good, right? Look, we think the media is able to, in a sense, like talk about these kind of messages without any sugarcoating. But the distinction here is that we're able to talk about it in a more nuanced light, where we're not pitting all of these kind of real world problems and contexts against like the cost benefit analysis of like your movie makers who are lucrative in nature, right? So we think then there's the exclusive harm towards the rise of these dystopian messages, right? The second like layer to this is that we think that we're going to just tell you and preempt this idea of the trade-off, right? About how we might necessarily lose some form of like traction and media attention because like these like the counterfactual on our side is not as it's not as intense and will not attract so much media attention. We think that there's a trade-off that we're willing to make because insofar as comparatively there's a greater net harm of these kind of like fictitious messages. We're very proud to stand on proposition.
Right, in fact, Prime Minister was a leader.
Does life imitate art or does art imitate life? Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going to ask that question to side government. Now, Mr. Speaker, first of all, let me characterize the debate for today, right? Why do we depict this dystopian depiction in media? Why media specifically? Well, number one, we live in a millennial society where we spend most of our time either with our friends or just chilling at home watching Netflix. So this is the current world that we live in. That is status quo, right? Number two, why dystopian societies? Well, first of all, we believe that in why dystopian depictions of media. First of all, why? Well, ladies and gentlemen, dystopian depictions of media, number one, shows us what happens if we stay on this route. Let's say we stay on the vast expansion of technology. Black Mirror covers that. Let's say we take the worst qualities of humanity. The Judge Dredd movie covers that. So in this dystopian depictions, right? We take some aspects of humanity, we say that this is what happens if we continue to grow, if we continue to be egoistic, if we continue to not care about the environment, if we continue to just be lazy. Okay, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, side opposition says that we cannot live in a utopia where we are going to sugarcoat everything. In the worst case scenario, they are going to sugarcoat the depiction of media where everything is a utopia. And even in their best case scenario where everything is realistic per se, that they still cannot show this depiction of dystopia. Even if they show, they would show it in what? Documentaries. Who watches documentaries? Millennials do not watch documentaries. They watch Netflix series. They think about the Netflix series. But before that, a few rebuttals, right? Number one, I said that Black Mirror shows the demonization of technology, where if we continue on this route of technology, the worst possible outcome comes, right? And we are okay with that. We are okay with showing the worst qualities of humanity. Why? Because we want people to be better. We want people to know that this isn't right, that technology is there, but we should not overuse technology, right? For example, let's say Star Trek a few years, 20 years ago, they already depicted iPads or video calling, and now it's happening. So why is it unrealistic to say that AI in, let's say, Black Mirror is unrealistic when technology itself is growing in a vast number of ways accepted?
So you think that like you're attaching you're automatically assuming that there's a bad connotation to things like technology, which might not be the case, right?
Can you repeat?
That like you say that it's important that people have a fear of like technology and stuff like that, but you are automatically asserting like that there's a bad connotation.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we are not saying that we want to instill fear in people. We want to start a discourse, a discussion where we say that if we continue in this way, this will happen. And will it happen? That is what we want. We want a discourse. We do not want to show a horror film where people get scared but go home and take nothing from the media depiction, right? That's what we do not want. What we want is a realistic depiction where we take even the worst of qualities or even the best of qualities to show that yes, this is what's going to happen in the future. Now, ladies and gentlemen, second thing, yes, we do want these things to be controversial. Why? Because people love controversial things. People love to talk about controversial things. It gets trending on Twitter. It's a good conversation starter with people. Now, moving on to my points, right? What am I going to talk about today? I'm going to talk to you about the difference, a comparative between a utopian where they sugarcoat everything, or even a realistic way but they still do not show dystopian depiction, compared to in our world where we show dystopian depiction. While my Deputy Prime Minister will talk about how media has potential to act as more than just pure entertainment, and how dystopian depiction affects the general public, right? So first of all, what is their world? Their world is unrealistic. Why? Because they are not showing what is going to happen. What they want is people to feel good about themselves, stay and just play their phones all day. Why? Because nothing's going to happen. We're not going to show you what's going to happen if you continue to do it. Just do you. And then there is no change in their world. There is no change in their world. Why? Because there needs to be a push for change to start. In their world, they are okay with people sitting down, not even thinking about the consequences of their life right now, but just enjoying it. They want a bohemian society where people are happy, people are fun, but they do not want people to actually think about the consequences of right now, right? They want people just to feel good, to feel comfortable. While in our world, we are showing a realistic depiction, even in extreme versions of it, it is still realistic. Why? Because art imitates life. In this case, where people see where either Blade Runner, Dread, and even Wall-E or Ant's life, they see a dystopian society where humanity has failed. So when they see humanity has failed, what do? They're not going to sit on their ass all day. They're actually going to think about what's going on. You're going to think about why is this happening? Why do people think this can happen? And there will be a discourse, even if a slightest of discourse happens, in our worst case scenario, that's already better than the best case scenario of side government, right? Number two, that people will work to change. Who wants to see a dystopian future where you are ruled by Terminators or AI, or that humans are savages? No one. So when they see these depictions, right, they think that, oh, Maybe I'm like that. Maybe I should change. And ladies and gentlemen, we like to get people out of their comfort zone. Why? Well, when you're in your comfort zone, you sit down on your ass. You think that this is life. I just want to have fun. There's no consequences. Let me drink all day or let me watch TV all day without actual consequences of life. So what side government has to do today, right, is to prove to us that showing dystopian harms has more harms than actual benefits. They also have to show to us that media like television, film, and books are just for the sake of entertainment without any educational value. But that is what they need to do. While opposition just has to prove to you that with the depiction of dystopian society, there are benefits that people will change. On side opposition, we value change. We want people to be better. We do not want people to be comfortable where they are. We do not want a dystopian society, because why a dystopian society is realistic. In our world, we take that into account and we want to push all the negatives away. We want a change. And that is what side government does not want today. With that, I have never ever been proud to oppose. Thank you.
Thanks. We welcome Vivian.
Well, I'm really sorry that I, as an individual, find documentaries really entertaining and interesting. I'm sorry that to you, that somehow my way of like viewing something as entertaining and enjoyable is not like valid to you. But so first of all, I think that clearly there's a generalization that documentaries do have some sort of entertainment value, right, in learning about the world or whatever. So I think that ultimately is quite subjective, right? People lie on the spectrum. There are people that are interested in documentaries, people that are interested in dystopias. We never argue about that. So I think that it's fair and reasonable to say that there are people who watch documentaries, people who watch dystopia like futures and universes. So okay, that clear out. So I think that talk about discourse without giving us a specific value of what this discourse does, or whether this discourse is in fact valuable in enacting some sort of change in behavior under their own characterization, that people sit on their asses all day and watch shows on Netflix, tells more or less reinforces the point that people are not going to do anything even after they watch after they watch dystopian like futures and like media, right? So I think that all of that speaks to us that they haven't given us a substantial analysis of why that is beneficial or creates some sort of change that is valuable, while us are giving you more harms about why dystopian users can actually desensitize people, which I don't think it is sufficiently dealt with, because what I first people said was extremely important and spent like almost the entirety of the speech proving, which is that when people see like futures that are extremely distorted, right, or even if they are realistic, like, let's take them on their best, right, that they'll still view it as fiction. The fact is, dystopian universes will always be couched under a veil of fiction, right? That they'll never ever relate it in the real life because it's so distant from them that it's difficult to imagine, right? Then that's what characterizes dystopian universes and makes it entertaining, because it entertains the fact of a possibility that is so detached from reality. You think at best, right, it generates some sort of philosophical discourse about ethics, but doesn't actually create changes. So the biggest problem with dystopias is that it actually diverts attention away from like media attention that could have been spent on, say, your documentaries that you want to like invalidate. They think that on our side, the comparative advantage and the exclusive benefit on our side, therefore, the counterfactual is that rather there will be no dystopia, or very little, and then the best case of this kind of dystopian media. Most of it say on increasing spending and funding towards environmental catastrophe that people do buy into is precisely is the actual reality that people need to be more informed about. We think that these are more valuable, that even if we lose media attention for people who want to watch dystopian universe, we're willing to trade off with that. We think it's far more useful. We think that we minimize the harms of decentralization. We think that therefore we win that clash. So let's break it out a bit further, right? So all of that on dystopian universes and the specific harm that they wanted us to talk about. So let's take them at their best case, that like people will have a huge reaction to dystopian universes. What I think that is bad is that at this point in time, right, that even if there's a reaction, I think a reaction is extreme. That the people who consume this kind of media are already the people who have existing fears about technology, right? That media, like Black Mirror, the point of Black Mirror is to demonize humanity, or like at least demonize technology, or at the very least be extremely cautious about technology or what technology can do. Therefore, that further limits growth of technology, in which that people actually act on those fears, right? That people feed, this media feeds into their fears and insecurities about the future. That they no longer want, like say, a company to integrate technology into like their businesses, because they think that, oh no, this is a sign of the dystopian universe happening, right? So even in their best case, right, where there's actually a reaction and response, we don't think the response is positive. We think that like installing VR technology, which is a thing now in hospitals for palliative treatment for patients, will be something that the people on their side will reject because of fear of this kind of like dystopian futures happening. No. So let's move on to one more thing, right? Which is when they say that even if like these dystopian universes are like unrealistic, right? Then they'll still believe in it because art imitates life. I think that's a really like not an argument at all. There's no actual analysis. We think that what really matters, therefore, and okay, I'm sorry. A side note, we don't think it's fair for them to compare our case of like a utopia versus a dystopia, because that's really not our case. So that shouldn't be the comparison. Our case is about trying to prevent distortion of facts, trying to prevent like fear-mongering for like technology, or vice versa, the desensitization of actual realities that are happening, such as global warming, because people no longer want to take action, because people are desensitized to it. So let's move on to some constructive material, right? As to why specifically it is so bad that why we regret so greatly that there is a rise of dystopian like media. One, we want to clarify and clear that we don't hate dystopian novels. We think that they are interesting, they are probably good for like developing like say philosophical thoughts. We think that it's not good if you want to present dystopias as a solution to real life problems, because dystopian universes only present possibilities. They present like things that what technology could possibly become, but they never actually provide solutions. We think that's extremely bad, because on our side, we think more effort and more time and money can be spent on developing this kind of discourse or documentaries about actual technology, like for example AI in cars. Okay, sorry, I was going to tell you. Actual AI in like say cars, self-driving cars, and actually generate discourse about that. We think that a documentary about that will be far better, and there is a trade-off because there's limited funding and limited attention. So the funding is used in creating like extremely sensationalized like dystopian futures cannot be used to create a better and more comprehensive, or just trying to engage audiences in like making people be interested and watch documentaries about things that are happening and that are completely real and happening in our world. I think that's far better in terms of information. And on the last tier, we think that this is a trade-off, right? That no matter what, both sides will concede that like they might they want cautionary tale, or that our side might lose like this kind of like cautionary tale, or like amount of people watching it. We think that's fair, because our side, even if there's less people, the discourse is far more valuable, it's like going to be far more long lasting, and doesn't have the kind of fear mongering that actually impedes tangible changes they want to make in the real world. Whereas the loss on their side, right, is far less greater harm on our side, where we like practically there's really no harm in just like having more realistic decisions. They need to prove a harm. They are the ones that have far less comparative advantage. Very proud to propose. Yeah.
Alright, thanks. Deputy, welcome to the
Mr. Speaker, in a world that we live in, if you want to look for sensationalized content, you don't need to look any further than the news itself. So if side government wants to come here and tell you that the problem with dystopian depictions within movies and media is a problem and is desensitizing people and distorting facts to a point where people are going to get harmed by it, we think that that's wrong, because there are far more fact-checked things that are apparently fact-checked and are spun out of control for public consumption. But when there is a subtle hint for people to get on and see what their world could potentially lead to in 20 or 30 years, they want to regret that very thing that exists. We want to show you why it is necessary for people to choose the media as a channel, as an alternative to give people these messages. Because clearly in today's world, when we get on the news, we know that every single news channel that we watch has some sort of political leaning based on the funding that they get. Therefore, these directors that think out of the box realize that people need to go further than just news to be able to get the messages that they need to get. Because we currently live in a world where worrying about living in nuclear wasteland and uninhabitable planets is not a far off possibility, and it is no longer a worry just for scientists, but for the world at large. Because we can't expect that 1 or 2% of the world's scientists to get together and suddenly help us from the apocalypse that is imminent, right? Therefore, now I'll move on to my substantives as to number 1, how the media acts as far more than just entertainment. And like I just told you, it is an alternative to channel out all the harms that society could potentially face, right? Number 1, it is the perfect conduit to educate and spread awareness. Because we all know that in day-to-day conversation, we let out way more movie quotes than we do citations of actual books got to do with nuclear annihilation or potential global warming. And we think that if there is a way to impact people and be able to make them make informed choices as to what they do with their day-to-day lives to avoid an annihilation for their future generations, we think that that's an immense benefit on our side. And that desensitization will not happen because it's a very imminent and possibility in our near future, right? And then secondly, even simple movies such as WALL-E, right, which might be entirely kid-friendly, if you watch it and realize what the message is trying to portray, it can go miles. Because we clearly know that the waste that humans produce is far more than plain sustainable, and we need to do something about it. And if it takes a movie like WALL-E to desensitize our kids and tell them that the world is going to shit, then so be it. Then, furthermore, we have to concede one thing, that no matter what movie genre we are talking about, dystopia, utopia, or so on and so forth, you still have crappy movies. Like dystopian movies, we had The Bad Batch, that was this cannibalistic wasteland where people just devoured each other, and it didn't really properly have an ending either. But even that had a takeaway message, that if different qualities that we have as humans in today's world, that we have progressed from being normal people, that this can be prevented, and this will not desensitize people, mind you, Mr. Speaker. You go back home and think. If you go back home and these thoughts keep you awake, it's not being desensitized to watch a horrorcore. It's you realizing that this is very much a possibility that you guys, if you do something as a combined effort, can clearly avoid. And we think that is a tremendous benefit on our side, right? And then furthermore, they talked about wanting the attention that we put into dystopian movies, into documentaries. But we tell you at the end of it, if we want the benefit to be accrued by everybody, right? If we want the world to be able to save itself, we can't just cater to people that enjoy documentaries. And documentaries exist in status quo. Documentaries about global warming exist in status quo. But for the people that do not watch these documentaries and might be able to read between the lines with dystopian movies, we say that this increases our outreach if we are to have any impact. Yeah.
We think that like the criteria of like documentaries vis-a-vis dystopian universe are too shallow, because the point that you're trying to make is that the funding or the way that you produce a dystopian future can be transferable to the way you produce documentaries, like the way that you start producing documentaries in Netflix,
I get it.
to get
Yeah. Sit down. But you have to realize that the same people that put money into box office films that involve dystopian futures are not the same kind of people that produce or put in their funding to making of documentaries, right? Because they will not get the returns to what they are going to invest in. Therefore, you need to realize that even in your best case scenario where you want this funding to be transferred to that field, you will not be able to achieve the results that you say you'll be able to, because reality strikes in. And since side government wants to avoid that reality of an impending doom, they don't even want us to be able to gain access to these dystopian movies that might affect more people than status quo might. And then I will also talk to you about wasted media potential, right? Because throughout our lives, we have had movies that exploit on the facts of sexism, gender stereotypes, such as Mean Girls, Gossip Girl, Friends, Big Bang Theory, and so on and so forth. And we think that this potential and this funding that can be used in the very same sector is being wasted. And if we don't put our attention into this, and we clearly know that it won't go into the field of documentaries either, then what's the point in making an effort, right? And then my last few points will be how dystopian depictions affect us as a general public, right? At the end of the day, no matter how many people are affected or are able to read between the lines between these dystopian universes in these movies, right? That is already an improvement on status quo, as in we have already increased our outreach to more people. And furthermore, we all are aware that nothing teaches the human race more than negative portrayal. Because if we show them a world that is accurate to today's portrayal of the world, they'll be like, oh, it doesn't seem like there's much impending doom, right? I'm fine with it. Or perhaps if you show them utopia, they might have the temporary happiness of enjoying a happy movie. But if we show them dystopia, they'll be like, holy shit, my life is going to go down the drain. My kids will not be able to live in peace. My kids will not be able to live in the same peace that I am, because perhaps the world will be a nuclear wasteland by the time they're born. And we think that that is extremely harmful for people to not be given the opportunity to conceive the fact that this is a possibility, and we are robbing them of a realistic perception if we don't let them have access to dystopian movies in the media. Thank you.
Okay. All right, I think the other will come to
We think it's extremely messy and problematic for the op bench to mix up documentary with like realistic portrayals and take these realistic portrayals into your dystopia. For instance, look, if they want to say that dystopia is actually more interesting than normal documentaries, adding beyond the realistic factors, there needs to be something something that you cannot get from the real world. There is something that you cannot get from the documentaries. The controversies that LO want to talk about, they all drop these characterizations as the debate goes on. Why is this harmful? Why is this contradiction actually hurt their case? Firstly, they are considered to the need of realistic portrayals. This is very important in this debate because they recognize that in this debate, insofar as cost and benefit analysis is a priority, recognize that therefore the most realistic portrayals will garner the most realistic and most probable solutions that are most practical in this case. Therefore, we think that in our paradigm whereby the counterfactual is documentaries, you will actually be more likely to know which of these specific groups will be harmed instead of the possible future you or the possible future your grandson, etc. These are things that we talk about. Why is this an exclusive harm on their side? Because recognize, my first Chinese speakers spend a lot of time telling you why the limited attention, the limited funding can only goes to one specific case. I.e., if you choose to spend your time on dystopia, animes, etc., be an otaku who stays at home, talk about Tokyo Ghouls like man-eating monsters, etc., you will not be the group of parties that actually enact this change, that actually cares about women's rights, that actually cares about something that is boring in the first place. This I will break it down into two categories that we will win in this debate. Firstly, what does a typical hardcore dystopian audience look like? Secondly, do we actually have them to do any good, or like are they actually wasted because they go into this dystopian audience in the first place? Firstly, look at what Yao told us about how a typical dystopian audience look like. They say that they are those who find documentaries boring because they are about real world issues. They find controversies. They find like futuristics, those like animated scenes very exciting in the first place. So what are these kind of people and what can we really do about them in the first place? What's their incentive? If they are people who only looks out for things that interest them, things that are entertaining to them, they are unlikely to be actors that are important anyways, right? Because recognize that if they are not even willing to sit through documentaries, what makes you think that they will spend money, they will actually go down to visit these franchise minorities in the first place to begin with? We don't understand any positive materials coming from their side. They have not proven any mechanism, no thank you. And in terms of incentive structures, we took all their characterization, took them on their best. This is their exact words. Therefore, they fail on their own characterizations. Secondly, what do we want the millennials to then do? We want to change this perception that you can just be an otaku staying at home watching your animes thinking that you have done something good, you have saved the world in your own daydreams. We want them to be actualized, to be involved in these societies. We think that they have misrepresented our case to be just documentaries per se. You can, no thank you. After you watch these documentaries, you can join initiatives, you can join the march, you can join like pin dot movements for like LGBT rights, etc. These are things, tangible things, that will actually make you be part of the community, not just like the future you that you maybe can't see, or like you can go both ways, etc. They have never told you any mechanisms to why just seeing or thinking about these things will definitely make you a better person, or what are the actual tangible things that actually come about. They have filled their roles and their burdens to actually prove for mechanistic things to bring about these things. No thank you. We just need to prove that it is more harmful on their side. We don't even need to have a counter policy, but just by the virtue of us having a more counter policies, we are more engaging and we have more factual basis. And look, we want them to start watching boring documentaries, even if they are boring, even if our worst case scenario. We don't want them to know the exact people who are suffering. We want to know the names. We want to know which countries are suffering. We don't want them to worry about future problems because they are more like what the web characterized. This war is already very close to like a nuclear like stalemate. It's very close to like a nuclear warfare that we don't want to see. Therefore, we can see existing problems that are equally prominent as characterized by them. Why do we not then go for these initiatives? Why do we let ourselves have the comfort, no thank you, to stay in our rooms, to trap ourselves in the fictional world and think that we are then productive? Look, fictional and being productive in the real world, they are two contradicting paradigms that they never draw the link to. Therefore, we recognize that this actually hurts their entire case because they have never really told us why otaku will suddenly march the streets for women's rights, for instance, for anything. So they have filled their entire burden and they have characterized in their own disadvantage to begin with. I think in order to make this a more meaningful debate, we need to engage like what exactly is the best outcome of that what can achieve. Recognize that even if we do recognize that because of having more interest, because they are more able to rah-rah the audience, they will then have more audience knowing this issue. We recognize that then these people, knowing this issue, will still incur extra steps to actually take tangible steps. We would much rather, given the limited resources, given the urgencies of certain issues such as refugee crisis and your environmental issues, we rather skip the step of gaining more attention and just let them go on to the straight of like the tangible steps to solving this problem. No, thank you. Before 6 years.
Would you be willing to let people watch documentaries, lesser people, lesser impact, rather than having a bigger outreach of both documentaries and these movies being able to make a better collective impact? Where's the harm in ours?
Understand, sir. Our attitude differs from your side, whereby you let people who don't want to watch documentaries run away. So these are the people, they will be completely lost on their side. They will never ever want to watch documentaries. They will never ever want to participate in these events. Whereby on our paradigm, we want to actually, I think, even on comparative, even if we take it as a wash, we didn't get any net benefit, is that we will still have the same number of voters that are doing the actual tangible things. There's no harm to pursue this, and we are the sides that actually wants to tap on this untapped pool of people who actually just watch animes at home, who actually just watch these like dystopia things without knowing where it fits, which country exactly I'm involved, right? We recognize that it is good. It is always good to know about issues. It's always good to be interested and feel passionate about an issue. But recognize that we have a lot of urgent issues
issues, then we cannot spend a lot of time, we cannot let them be like very, we cannot baby feed, we cannot like spoil these kids anymore. We need to let them realize that urgencies of issues means that we cannot cater and babysit them to always let their interests be a priority. We need to let them take on the role of protecting the world. We need to let them take on the role of being like responsible citizens. Therefore, we are willing to trade off the interests of certain people in the short run. In the long run, because these problems are going to surface, it will become like something that will hurt your interest in law because you are part of this society anyways if the problem progress. So these people will join off to the side of like protecting the environmental rights, for instance, etc. in our world more. So therefore, recognize that this actually slows down the progress of realization. This slows down the process whereby reality hits them. This only makes these people only recognize that these are not fictional things until they are the parties that are being harmed in the animes that they watched like 30 years ago. Therefore, support the propose.
Somewhere along this debate has turned into whether documentaries are better or dystopian depictions in media is better. Now, that's not the debate, but still, side opposition is willing to engage that. So let's really see whether it's relevant to the debate, or even if by some virtue it is relevant, why do we still take that clash? Now, they have conceded that documentary reaches different audiences and dystopian media depictions reach different audiences. And they have painted you a world where somehow the funds are completely homogeneous to go from media depictions straight into documentaries, when Satya has already pointed out to you that funds are recoverable when you make dystopian media depictions, when they are not recoverable under their paradigm. So even then, we do not see why there is a law in their paradigm where documentaries and dystopian media depictions cannot coexist together. We accept their logic that both reach different audiences. Both have their own benefits, and we'll come to documentaries harms later. Now, why is it that we are debating whether we should have this over that when that is not the debate today? We tell you we can have both of that. We don't have to prove to you that dystopian media depictions are better. We don't have to prove to you, but we will still prove to you its virtues. Now, one of their main arguments is that, no thank you, one of their main arguments is desensitivity, that it will desensitize the audience. Now, here's my question. Going and sitting down in a movie that you know is fiction, that you paid money to be entertained, but still taking away a subtext of a lesson that the creator of that content has put in there for you, will that desensitize you? Or this massive pouring in of funds to make graphic and detailed documentaries again and again and again being force-fed to you because you do not have the media that used to be your entertainment with the value-added benefit of this certain subtext, which would desensitize you more? And they accuse us of having this otaku audience. Now, let me characterize who is really the audience of dystopian media depictions. Would you know that those anti-AI logic that you criticize so starkly is still one of the ideologies of Elon Musk? He bought over a whole dystopian media depiction movie and put it free on his website for people to watch, to share the point of view that AI isn't all it's cut out to be. Stephen Hawking, in his dying breath, still supported his standpoint that he did not like AI. It's time and time again, and it's their arrogance to completely dismiss it and say that this is counter-tech, this is counter-contribution, that this is counterproductive just because it does not fit in with their narration of today's science. Yeah, thank you.
I think there's a difference between like informed awareness and informed caution about, say, like technology, and like feeding into people's insecurities about the future. What dystopian universes do, because they bring it to the extreme. They want to distort the truth, we make it sensational enough that people actually buy into it and like incredibly fearful.
There you have heard. We are not talking about a complete direct depiction of real-world issues. We are talking about dystopian depictions in the media. The definition given by the motion was books, novels, TVs, so on and so forth. You talk about distortion, what you call distortion, I call dramatic license. There is justified dramatization because media in itself, fiction in itself, has to be entertaining. You can't just pump in full facts as like a documentary because it would be a documentary. It is impossible to have media without dramatization. So to come up here and say that we're distorting ideas, no, it's fiction with a subtext of valuable lessons that humanity needs in today's world. So that being said, what other clashes were there today? One of that was how it would provoke people, that provocativeness is bad. Now here's the thing. First they said that dystopian media depictions do not carry any weight, do not give anything, do not bring about any change. And suddenly they're afraid of it being provocative. Now here's my question. If really this otaku who couldn't get out from his house and go out and just sitting at home, sitting on his ass, eating and watching these pictures, now would he really be so provoked as their latest features tended to point out as opposed to their PM features? Now here's what we don't understand. Is that, are you debating that these media depictions are ineffective, or are you debating that it is too effective? Here's what we don't understand. What else? Yeah, okay, and they say that we did not prove to you the link between why would an audience get up and go out and accrue benefit to society after watching a dystopian media depiction, and they later on conceded that the audiences are vastly different between their proposed alternative of documentaries and our media depictions. Now here's the thing. If the otaku who could not even be bothered to do anything after he watched the media depictions, they have, if anything, they have failed to prove to us why that guy would actually go and watch a documentary when he might just go and watch a rom-com. Like, it wouldn't be his first choice, but I'm sure as hell he's not going to watch a documentary. And even if he does, is he going to get up and go out and march? What is this accrued benefit that you're talking about? And they have conceded yet again that, well, okay, even if it reaches a fewer people because it's better discourse. Now here's the thing. Discourse, sorry to say, but discourse in a large part is quantity. You can't characterize better discourse just because the elite are watching it and talking about it, but you have to reach the masses. No thank you. The thing is, under our side, we are reaching the masses because there are audiences that you cannot access with documentaries that depiction of dystopian media can. Now there is no concession here, there is no trade-off. It is vastly two different things. Apples and oranges, we need both, but somehow they seem to think that it's a zero-sum game where both can't coexist together. Okay, so what have we brought to the debate today? We have told you that, and this is why they tried to pass off our PM speech as irrelevant. Now here's the thing, they come out and say that it feeds into your fears and insecurities and that's why we shouldn't have it. And then they go on to say that media is non-binary, so it means if you don't have dystopian, you won't automatically have utopian. But here's the thing, if you don't have a negative or far-off perception of future, everything other than that is not going to be a dystopian thing. If you are going to regret a dystopian media depiction, that means there is not going to be any element of dystopian media depiction, and everything else is going to be utopia. What is a utopia? You feel good, it's a rom-com, it's a comedy, it's a historical drama, stuff like that. So, again, we do not see the clash here. We gave you that comparative analysis because we want you to know that while they are trying to pass off a world that supposedly isn't a utopia, it is in fact a utopia because it does not have dystopia. He came out and gave you so much points on why media is the best conduit to reach these audiences that a documentary can never reach. That there is so much wasted potential that it affects society in such a vast way, and they have refused to engage with any of that just by saying that it doesn't reach the audience and therefore our documentaries are better. When did we ever start debating about documentaries? We beg you, do not judge this debate on documentaries. Probably stop listening to them after their first speech. Judge the debate properly because we have debated to you about dystopian media depictions. With that, never been prouder to oppose.
Firstly, you need to realize that the categorization of this debate depended on the fact that you need change in the world nevertheless. But which side gives you more numbers and a bigger outreach to materialize that change in the world that we live in today? Now to make these clashes and why we want them easier for you to memorize, there are 4 Ds, and those are distortion, desensitization, discourse, and documentaries against dystopia. Firstly, we came to you and we told you effectively that this is not what you could categorize as a distortion, but rather a dramatic license to portray media in an entertaining way that people would more likely consume, and therefore it also benefits those companies in the capitalistic way that they want, as well as society can have a take-home message from it. Therefore, the distortion claim was clearly dismissed. And the second clash was the desensitization, which I spent a solid 2.5 minutes at least talking to you as to how this is not desensitization if it keeps someone awake at night. It's not the insecurities of seeing problems that far ahead. It's them realizing that it's a possibility that they or their families will one day have to live through. It's very much a realistic way to go about things, and if we need to touch on people's personal insecurities regarding the future, then so be it, if it is going to increase the outreach to come about and change the world for good, right? And thirdly, we told you about discourse and how discourse was clearly a number game. Because if we limit it to documentaries that exist in status quo, we are going to have a discourse with fewer numbers. But however, if we combine all media, including dystopian depictions in media, then we have a bigger number, a bigger outreach, and therefore a bigger possibility for discourse. I mean, if they want to dismiss this claim by saying that you do not have discourse amongst people that go and watch these so-called pointless movies, we say, have you ever been on Reddit about how people deconstruct and see what movies take-home messages are? And then we say, absolutely, because if you have ever been on Reddit, you would see these detailed analysis, right? And then the fourth and last clash that we clearly established to you why we should win today was that this debate was not documentary against dystopia. This debate was about proving why dystopians and documentaries cannot go hand in hand to make a bigger outreach in the world of ours that we live in today that requires greater awareness on these topics, whether or not they acquire it through dramatic license, which is portrayed in movies. Because if that is what it takes to increase your audience, which you clearly haven't told us how your documentaries will increase the audience, because if people don't watch dystopian movies, they are bound to watch some other movie and not documentaries. So therefore, we think in your best case scenario, it will remain in status quo, that people will be able to watch documentaries, and people that don't watch documentaries will not have a way to have this take-home message about the imminent problems and imminent danger that our world faces today. But in our worst case scenario, we tell you that perhaps we will have a handful of people that watch dystopian movies and say, oh, perhaps I should do something about it in my life. And if we think that those 3 or 4 are still an addition to the existing crowd, and if we have already proved to you that the harms that they said, such as distortion, desensitization, and lack of discourse, is not going to be present in our worst case scenario, we tell you that we have a better outcome with lesser harms. And if they take on the burden to prove to you, then I'll gladly watch it. Thank you.
Just going to talk briefly about 2 things that we think we saw in opposition that really hurt their case, right? First, we realized that we had a very lazy opposition who was very selective insofar as what characterization they talk about, right? He talked about like convenient groups of people and matched them to like random outcomes without talking about in which circumstances and which groups of people we are talking about, right? What do I mean by that? It means that we talked to you in first speaker and third speaker. That look, there was a spectrum of people who we were talking about, and in like with regards to how they will react towards these dystopian stories, right? But we think that like opposition today, they just kind of like chose, like in your first speaker you talked about how basically generalized millennials as Netflix watching slobs. might not be wrong, but like, and then after that, they told us that like, there will be some benefits that will accrue with regards to discourse, right? So we really weren't sure about when they were talking about which type of people. But my third speaker clarified about it. I'm going to point it out in greater clarity later. Second thing that really hurt opposition was that we think that there was a lack of mechanism for how things work, right? Notice they like to throw around this buzzword of discourse a lot, but we don't actually see the mechanism behind it. What do I mean by that? It means that like they have narrowed, like they have basically like made this debate very narrow insofar as it becomes a debate of whether or not there is discourse or there's no discourse, right? That's not the case. They haven't told us about why, like how this discourse would actually bring about actual change, right? And so we think that there's a harm here. Two questions for today. First, about what the media is actually like with regards to the tendencies and in their portrayal of messages. Second, about how we best gain traction and create the discourse that is so want to talk about, right? First question, about what the media is like. Here's where we realize that like they told us this argument about how art imitates life, like, okay, just because you use a fancy quote doesn't make your assertion right? We are the side that actually gave you clear economic incentive that because the media industry and teens watching Netflix was such a lucrative industry, it means that like the ability for you to create more intensive stories in a very expanding market was integral, right? It means that we gave you actual structural reasons for why our case was good, right? And when PYU had told you about why this kind of intense portrayal was bad, they then like realized the problem with this and then shifted their labels towards using this dramatized license, right? Like we do not care about the labels. The point here is that like insofar as there's such intense stories, we think the fear mongering is real, right? Second question, about how we best gain traction and create discourse, right? Here's where we're going to talk about the kind of people, the groups of people that we're talking about and their respective reactions, right? We cannot just like select the characterization that we're okay with when we're talking about different groups of people. First group of people, about people who don't care anyway, right? People who think that documentaries are boring, we tend not to see any kind of like productive outcome with regards to the discourse anyway. So this is really not the kind of groups of people that we're talking about. The marginal benefit here is not does not exist, right? The people that like we want to talk about, the people who actually like do something about it and like documentaries aside, because that's really a reductive representation of our case, right? The people who have these tendencies to enact change anyway, they would do so on our side. So we think this is a non-contentious issue. That's here, right? So insofar as they have no marginal benefit, like how we break this deadlock is that we prove to you from first speaker, undefended from the start, was that there was an exclusive net harm that resulted from these stories, right? We told you about how fear mongering was real, right? And we think that like it's not just about fear mongering, right? Because insofar as like we told you in first and undefended as well, is that like they would like to run this idea of how basically about how discourse and change is about the masses, right? We already preempted this when we told you that not all attention is good attention. We told you about how this kind of non-action results in things that are counterproductive when the public actually basically thinks that this collective action, they think that they've done enough and there's no such change in their case. Because we were a side who was not resistant towards dealing with the nuances of people who were talking about, very proud to stand in government.
Right.